Welcome back to the TrailBLAZER pod. Efrat shares the emotional and physical challenges of navigating breast cancer. She discusses the impact it had on her identity and the importance of community support. Efrat also highlights her innovative solutions, including the creation of CureDiva and EZbra, aimed at addressing the unique needs of women undergoing breast surgeries. Her story is one of resilience. Let's dive in. Welcome to the TrailBLAZER pod. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you.
I feel very grateful to have you here today because you're very inspiring, and you're inspiring in a very personal way because I come from a family with a lot of cancer. So your story touches me personally. I'm wondering if you can share with our audience a little bit of your background, like where you're from, where you grew up.
Happily. So I was born in Jerusalem, where I was exposed to, a lot of cultures, and growing up, between the historical backgrounds was kind of a lot of food for my imagination.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of what we're going to be talking about starts post 2010, but I'm curious, what were you doing before 2010 career-wise?
So I was a multidiscipline artist and a published writer here in Israel.
Wow.
Yeah, and multidiscipline artists mean that I've done so many things, from being on sets of films and working in broadcast and writing for newspapers and so on
Wow.
and so on. Nothing that ever prepared me to being, a businesswoman or an entrepreneur.
Yeah, it sounds like though you were always very creative, which is part of being an entrepreneur as well. So at the age of 40, you were diagnosed with cancer. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this experience and how it changed your life. I know that's a big question because of course it did.
Well, I've made a career of sharing about my breast cancer, so everything is open to your questions. Well, I think I come from, a family of Jewish Ashkenazi women. My
Yeah.
grandmother had 5 sisters, and all of them had breast or ovarian cancer or both during the ages of 38 to 42. The
Wow.
only one that didn't have it was the one that died in the Holocaust. So she, probably she would have joined the distinguished club as well. And when my mom was 41 and I was 15, she was diagnosed. And I remember calling my best friend, telling her, listen, this is something that runs in my family.
Wow.
I need to see a doctor to make sure that I'm not going to have it.
At
And
15?
at the age of
Wow.
15, I took my best friend and I got a meeting at, with the gynecologist because, he was like a woman's doctor.
Yeah.
And I went to him, entered the room, and he looked at me and he said, what can I do for you? And I was like, well, all the women in my family
Oh my
have breast
gosh.
cancer. So I need to know what should I do not to be
Wow.
diagnosed at any phase. And he was like, well, that's so early for you. There's nothing you can do right now. And, they still didn't know anything about the gene.
Yeah.
So it was just like, I looked statistically and all the women in my family had it. So,
What does
there
that
was,
do to a 15-year-old though, if you're told like there's nothing you can do, but you know this is because 15 is very young. Like, do you live a little bit in fear?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think it was, kind of, I didn't realize that
Mhm.
it was a fear, because at first there was this year in which my mom had her
Yeah.
surgery and her chemotherapy and radiation and everything. So the fear was about my mom, is she
Got
going
it.
to survive it? It was a time in which cancer was
Yeah.
equals death. And my mom, she was very anxious to keep on with everything she is and not to become her
Wow.
diagnosis. So she kept on working. She didn't want us to tell anyone. It was a big, big, big secret. So I couldn't even understand that I was in fear about myself, you know. I was just like, okay. So, but I know that later on in my early 20s, I had this theory and I said that, okay, you're becoming a victim of any disease if you're a victim in your life, you
Interesting.
know, bullshit. Excuse my French,
No.
okay?
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, if I'm not going to be a victim in any area of my life, so I'm going to be saved from this destiny. And besides, you know, I did a lot of yoga. I was vegetarian. I thought that I was doing everything perfectly to avoid my destination. But at the age of 40, 5 months after I separated from my kid's father,
Wow.
you know, when everything was so crazy that, you know, I just couldn't think that anything can be worse than that. And then I just went for my routine checkup, coming from a family of BRCA mutation carriers. When they found the gene, of course, you know, I was requested to arrive and have the test. Of course, it was clear that what the answer would be. And then when I became 40, just had an MRI test included in my insurance.
Wow.
So when I went for my routine checkup, my breast doctor was just like, oh, you know what? You get an appointment for the MRI and, you know, we'll just align all the other checkups according to their routine.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And 3 months before I had a mammogram, they said everything's fine. You can come back in a year. I went to have the MRI. I didn't even go back to get the results because I was so certain that everything's fine. And, you know, it's in the hospital and it's far away and you have to drive there and you have to park there. So I was just waiting. And 5 weeks later, I just had an appointment around the corner, you know. So I was like, oh, I have this results that I need to pick up. And you're like certain that if something is wrong with your results, someone's going to give you a call, you know?
Yeah. That's a fair assumption.
Yeah.
So this is very interesting because when you come from a family where almost everyone has cancer, your brain prepares, but you were also in a place where you thought, not me, right? So I'm curious, when you got the news, what was your reaction? Did you feel like, of course, or did you feel like, how did this happen?
Both.
Both?
Both and
That's
at the same time. Yeah.
Wow.
And I really think that diagnosis with cancer, with every kind of cancer, but I think that there's a lot of specialities that has to do with breast cancer. But I think that diagnosis with a life-threatening disease is always breaking all your assumptions about the world.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. My grandmother passed at 49 from ovarian cancer. So I've seen this really take a toll on people and what it does. And so I want to ask you from your experience, and obviously you founded so many companies based on this, but what's the toll that breast cancer and reconstruction takes on a woman's sense of, you know, femininity and identity? How did you navigate it, first of all, that struggle? And how does it affect women in general?
I'd like to start from the general and then go back to myself because I'm giving a lot of talks about breast cancer and the experience. And usually what I do is after I give, you know, my introduction, and it's heavy duty, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm telling everybody, you know what? Let's have, you know, some refreshment. Get up. And then I tell them to stretch their arms to the front and I ask them to paint a tree and sun and their eyes are shut, of course. And then I ask them to paint a woman. And everybody is doing this.
Wow.
And to those who are listening to us, I'll just say that everybody is doing the curve of the breast to just describe a woman.
Yeah.
And I really think that when something is threatening, the most basic part that is defining us, that is defining our gender, that is defining our sexuality. And I think that this is something that, you know, you just grow up as a woman. So you have
Yeah.
certain
You don't think about it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have certain relations with your breast,
Yeah.
some of us like them, some of us don't,
Yeah.
some complaints. Yeah, they're just a part of what's
Yeah.
making you a woman. And then when a breast cancer diagnosis arrives, I think that the main question that is just seated there, and I've talked to thousands of women about their experience, and I really know that when I created CureDiva, my first startup, so it was a social commerce website. So we had a huge community, and when I'm saying huge, we had 70,000 women in our
Wow.
community in 2014, before Facebook even had
Wow.
a
That's incredible.
business plan, and everybody was talking about their experience. And I kept on hearing versions of the sentence, I went into the OR feeling that I'm going to leave my femininity there.
Wow.
And even if you're losing your liver, nobody sees it. It
Yeah.
says nothing
Right.
about you as a woman. It says about you as a person who has cancer and
Yeah.
might die of it. But it doesn't reflect on the basic, the most basic definition of you as a female.
Yeah. So I want to get into a little bit of your personal part. I listened to one of EZbra's videos where you talk about your experience. And first of all, I love that you always bring in a little bit of humor. You make it very human and you make everyone feel very comfortable. But you were talking about when you first woke up after your reconstruction surgery and you realized there's no nipples. And you were talking about how nobody talks about that. Nobody warned you. So what was that like?
I think that this is one of the most traumatic experiences I had during, a very long and winding road of
Yeah.
five surgeries and chemotherapy that got complicated. And I think that it was really cruel.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think that ever since, I'm talking to patients, I get phones from women that are about to go, to
Yeah.
undergo some kind of a surgery. I'm talking about the scars. I'm talking
Yeah.
about the implants flapping. I'm talking about everything because and I'm really encouraging women to go online and see real photos
Yeah.
of reconstructions, because what your surgeon is showing you are the
Yeah.
best cases. And there are so many, like,
Yeah.
not that best. I think that being an educated patient and being able to get educated
Yeah.
decisions is the most important part in having some kind of agency. I mean,
Yeah.
you're getting a diagnosis, and then you're just
Thrown
driven
into it.
into,
Hmm.
yeah, to this crazy journey in which you're going to have to decide. For me, it was, I had three tumors in one breast, and then the other one was healthy.
Yeah.
And I had to take a decision whether I'm keeping my healthy breast or,
Wow.
giving up both of them. Now, I had 48 hours to get
That's
that
it?
decision.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I was like, and the timing, and everybody is stressful because you have cancer. Every decision that you're taking is crucial.
Yeah.
It's going to affect you to the rest of your life. This is so important to give patients all the knowledge they need to be able to get to the right decision, to their personality and to their way of life and to their lifestyle. Because for me, the decision was, okay, so I might keep one and still have, the feeling that I have a breast, but then I'm going to be worried for the
Right.
rest of my life that, I
Right.
just have a ticking bomb over here. So no, I'm not going to do that. But if I was in another situation in my life, if I wasn't just divorced, if I wasn't,
Right.
a
Different
single
factor.
parent, if I had, more confidence in life, I might have
Right.
taken other decisions. And therefore, I really think that having all the knowledge that you need to make your own decision is so crucial.
That makes so much sense. It's so important in every aspect of life, but of course, when it comes to decisions like this, it's so much more important. So the fact that you're doing this is incredible. And I want to talk to you a little bit about it. You mentioned CureDiva, and you mentioned a little bit about what it is. When did you decide to start this? Like, how did you go from I have cancer, I'm dealing with this is my experience, to because a lot of women have cancer and they don't do anything about it. Like they take care of themselves and that's it. So where did that happen?
So, having said that, I'm an educated BRCA carrier for many years,
Yeah.
and I was sure when I was diagnosed that, I'm supposed to be the readiest patient
Yeah.
ever.
Right.
I should
Yeah.
have all the
Yeah.
resources just standing there for me. I know the terms, I know the doctors, my mom is,
Yeah.
thanks God, is still alive. After a few weeks, I realized that I waste so much time
Hmm.
and so much anxiety around my daily routine.
Wow.
Everything changed.
Yeah.
Okay, so firstly, I went through the surgery. So I got out of the surgery. I had to have someone helping me change my dressing. This someone was my mother, the survivor, Now my mother, a
Yeah.
good, proud mother,
Yeah.
she would never cry in front of me, right? Now she has to change my dressings every day at home. So it would be, this ceremony where I'm standing with my back to her because I don't want to see her looking at me.
Yeah.
She's standing there, doesn't want to look at my eyes. We are both crying,
Oh my God.
sobbing. And this was horrible. And I was like, but how come, there is no designated dressing for the breast? And this is how EZbra was born. But we'll get to that later.
Yeah.
But then it was like, chemo started. So I went and I got a wig, in advance to be ready. I wore the wig the day after, I shaved my head,
Yeah.
and it was so itching. And
Oh,
I felt, I went out and somebody was talking to me, and I just, was standing there. I saw his lips move,
yeah.
and I was only thinking, does he see? Does he notice?
Wow.
What does he think? And I was like, it made me crazy.
Yeah.
So I came back and I was like, no, I'm not going to hide. This is who I am. I'm just going through cancer now. I haven't done anything that I should be ashamed of. So I'm just going to wear, like soft hats and turbans and stuff like that. So, that day, a friend of mine, she's my fashionista friend, she
Okay.
arrives with like 5 huge bags with
Wow.
scarves and hats. And I'm just sitting there, trying them on. So first, all the silk covers just
Yeah.
dropped from my bald head. Okay. Note to self, no silk. Okay. But then, there were other things that didn't work and other things that did. And I was like, okay, but I have you as my friend. What does a woman,
Right.
living somewhere that no friend can arrive and, just bring so many
Yeah.
solutions to, is doing? And then every day kept on bringing new challenges. Now, the day I lost one eyebrow, and you wake up, wash your teeth, and I'm like, what happened? What just happened? And
Yeah.
what do I do now? How do
Right.
I get out? As we said in the beginning, I'm a very creative person.
Yeah.
So I kept on finding solutions, but then I was like, I'm one out of 8 women in the world. Okay. Until the moment I was diagnosed, I was the most desired customer for the lifestyle and well-being
Yeah.
of fashion industries. In a moment, I was just thrown out, and nobody sees me as a customer
Yeah.
with needs. Now, you know, a few years before I was pregnant. So I had everybody, telling me in this trimester, you're going to
Right.
experience this and
Yeah.
that and that. And we have the 1,000
Yeah.
products,
Yeah.
designated to help you with
There's
this
like a
and
playbook. Yeah.
and I was like, okay, so I'm the same woman.
Right.
The situation is that I'm in I'm overwhelmed with a medical or physical condition. You know, I have a set of new needs that I never experienced and I never even researched, but there's no one there saying, well, here you go. It was just like, how
Yeah.
can it be that when I have so much anxiety and I have no time to waste on, you know,
Yeah.
looking for solutions, there's nothing designated, you know,
Wow.
very friendly, very easy to just help me realize what I'm going to face and
Yeah.
what are the solutions that I can use to help me with that.
Wow. I have like goosebumps because it's just so inspiring. Because again, I was going to ask you later what trailblazer means to you, but this is literally the definition is that you dealt with a problem and instead of just figuring it out for yourself, you went and helped thousands and thousands of women. So I'm curious, was it you who focused on the early stages of getting these women and building the community?
So, of course, I had help. Nobody works alone. Nobody achieves
Yeah.
anything alone. When I graduated cancer, so I had so many ideas. So first, you know, I was like, CureDiva was the site that I wanted to
Yeah.
have as a patient. And I was, you know, looking for people that would want to do that.
Yeah.
People were like, well, that's a great idea, but you have to do it. No one is taking other people's ideas. And
Right.
first year after recovering, which is not a very accurate word to use because when treatments are over,
Hmm.
I think this is one of the hardest phases that
Really?
patients go through. Yeah. You know, there's referring to it as depression after treatment
Wow.
because for a very long time, you were managed. You know,
Hmm.
you had a medical team telling you, you'll do this and, you know, and then you'll do that. And then the next phase will be, and then you will
Yeah.
reach that. Everybody was taking care of you
Right.
and everybody was focused on you. And the only thing you had to do is
Be a
heal.
patient. Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah.
And then the moment treatment is over and they're telling you, okay, you can go and come back in 3 months. Everybody that was really supportive until that
Yeah.
moment is really happy to go back to their
Yeah.
lives, you know. My friends and my family were like the best
Yeah.
support anyone could ask for. But
Wow.
then, you know, it was almost a year that they've been taking care of me and my kids. And they really wanted to go
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
to their lives. And all of a sudden, you're standing there. You're supposed to go back to your life, but nothing is where you left it before you became
Yeah.
a breast cancer patient. After chemotherapy, I think it takes over a year until, you know, the body is
Wow.
really recovering from its effects. And so you're wounded, you know, emotionally and
Yeah.
physically. For me, it was also, you know, I was a married woman and then, you know, everything collapsed during this year. So I didn't have where to go back to.
Yeah.
I needed to reinvent
Yeah.
where I wanted to go.
That's a very pivotal time in someone's life. When it rains, it pours, but when you get to that point, I think that's when the most beautiful things happen. A few years later, you launched EZbra. What is EZbra?
Okay, so before I launched it, I have to say that EZbra, as said, it was my first initiative. You know, the day I
Okay.
woke
Okay.
up from I went back home from the surgery. I was like, I don't understand. How come there's
Yeah.
no bra that is addressing? You know, I couldn't realize that it didn't exist.
Yeah.
And because during the time that I founded EZbra, I had another 4 surgeries because my
Wow.
reconstruction kept on complicating at the best, you know, facilities with the best surgeons, and everything was the top
Yeah.
of practice possible. But then I was an unhappy patient after each one of them because I went home, I had to wash my bras from
Yeah.
blood and ooze, and it was really disgusting. And I couldn't change dressings alone, and it drove
Yeah.
me crazy that there was worldwide there was nothing designated for breast surgeries. Now we're talking about a market of, you know, that reaches between 17 to 20 million breast procedures worldwide
It's
annually.
wild.
Now,
Wow.
we're not only talking about breast cancer patients, we're also talking about, you know, women that are opting breast reduction and breast enlargement and breast lift and all other. We're talking about an organ with
Yeah.
a very unique shape requirement. The world is obsessed with breast.
Yeah, that's
You
true.
know, there are like push-ups and minimizer and maximizers and everything. And yet when it comes to women that are having surgery, there's no standard of care. There's nothing designated for those almost 20
Yeah.
million procedures. I kept on searching for it because I was sure that I'm not the only person that, you know, had this idea. And when I realized that it didn't exist, so I went for a patent search. And then when I knew there was nothing there, so I created this really, really, really silly prototype.
Yeah.
And I went for CureDiva, you know, and then I was like, okay, at a certain point, you know,
Yeah.
I can sell EZbra on CureDiva's
Right. Makes
platform.
sense. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then 2014, I got noticed that my patent was achieved. And then
Wow.
I had a very short time in which I had to raise funds to submit a patent. So I just dived into my new project. So EZbra is the first and only
It's
designated
amazing.
dressing for all breast procedures. It's a very, very thoughtful device because it really gives a perfect solution to all the challenges that those kind of surgeries bring. So for instance, most of the breast surgeries that has to do with breast cancer would be applied only on one side.
Yeah. Interesting.
So those patients are going to suffer from some kind of
Yeah.
asymmetry, right?
Yeah.
Makes sense, logical. Now, what are they doing today? They're telling those patients, they're either wrapping them with ace bands.
Hmm.
It's hard to do. No patient can do
Yeah.
this
Exactly.
alone.
Yeah.
No one, you know, and the other solution they use is to tell patients to buy a post-operative compression bra or a sports bra that is just, you know, very tight and it
Oh yeah.
supports the breast, which can be very comfortable, not when it is used as a dressing. You know, it's a garment. It
Right.
is not a medical device. It's not sterile. It becomes a kind of Petri plate
Yeah.
after a few days. And besides, when we're talking about patients, you know, with asymmetry, going to have compression
Yeah.
everywhere, but not on the missing part, which is
Right.
where the compression really needs to be.
So interesting. Yeah. You know, the best founding stories are the ones where you're like, wait, that's so obvious. I can't believe you're the first to create this because this should have existed forever. Those are always the best. Those are always the best and also usually the most successful, right? And
I agree.
I want to talk to you a little bit more about that journey, about like founding these companies. You mentioned raising money. What challenges did you face, especially as a woman?
Wow. It was a very lonely and
Hmm.
very intriguing experience because, first of all, nobody that I met knew what I was talking about.
Hmm.
Okay. No investor, no
Right.
VC, no one was a woman that had breast cancer.
Right.
Okay. So,
Yeah.
first, this is like the most obvious thing.
Yeah.
Okay. You're talking to people that don't
Right.
know what you're talking about. First. Second is they actually don't really want to know about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes
They're
sense.
like, you know, I used to sit there and with CureDiva, I used to talk about all the needs that women, you know, realize all of a
Yeah.
sudden that they have. And they would go breast prosthesis,
Yeah.
wigs, you know, creams, and they would just, you know,
Yeah.
squeeze, they would just
Yeah.
disappear in their chairs. They their appearance would be like, oh, please, please make this meeting end. We
Oh my
don't want to
gosh.
hear her. You know, it was just like too much
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
And even, you know, those that my sister-in-law had it and I don't remember her needing anything. I
Yeah.
remember, you know, that she would go out and she would go to work, you know, and I would really encourage them to go and speak to those
Yeah.
very brave women that don't complain like I do, you know, and ask them, if they had this kind
Mhm.
of a go-to, would they use it?
Yeah.
So, a few of them came back, saying, okay, it might be interesting because she said that she
Mhm.
would be happy, but most of the meetings would end, very shortly because they just didn't want to hear, not to mention to invest in
Yeah.
those kind of companies. This was like, a very, very hard. And I think that one of the things that evolved is that today nobody would even, think about saying things like
Yeah.
that. But I got recommendations from investors. Well, I think you should be thankful for being alive and stop complaining so much.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. So I'm assuming that the reason you didn't give up, because a lot of people do when they're met with resistance when they have this idea, is because it was such a personal mission for you. Is that the case?
It was, and by the way, going back to CureDiva's community and so on, one of the most helpful things that happened to me during my journey is support communities online. So I
Mhm.
had this amazing, amazing Twitter breast cancer community. We're really having discussions about how do we change policies and approaches,
Wow.
and how do we change the world to help
Mhm.
patients. So I would go on there. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning in Tel Aviv, okay, but I would go weekly to brainstorm with
Yeah.
them.
That's incredible.
And then I had this amazing support group here in Israel of breast cancer
Mhm.
survivors and fighters, that I knew that it wasn't only me. I knew that everybody I talked to, and I was talking already to, you know, tens and then hundreds of women about, the journey, and how does it
Yeah.
affect you. And I really knew that I had
Yeah.
something that I needed to bring
Yeah.
to this world. I was so determined about the need
Yeah.
for both CureDiva and EZbra that nothing could stop me.
Yeah. I was going to ask you later on about this question, but I think it fits in perfectly here. So with all your experience in founding companies, facing, a little bit resistance and just you kept going on, what advice would you give to women who want to start a business?
So first, my advice to all women, even before, founding companies, is keep complaining. Really.
Yeah.
I think that this is one of the most important things, that we were raised to
Yeah.
not complain.
Right.
But complaining is the first step to changing things. If you're complaining, you're focusing on what's need to be fixed.
Wow.
So I really think that when we are talking about our complaints, we are, you know, promoting change.
Wow. I really love that.
Thank you.
I've never heard anyone phrase it like that. That's very, very powerful.
Yeah, and I think that, this is part of what I found on those social communities, because when women start talking, very openly and
Yeah.
transparently to other women about what's not perfect, and that's complaining, we find that we're not alone with that.
Right.
And then we can start, growing the change. So that's the first thing. And my advice to someone that feel they have an idea of something they want to create in this world. So the first one is to allow themselves to dream about the best case scenario.
Mhm.
Okay, but really in details. This is where I'm going to get. This is how it's going to impact the world. This
Wow.
is the amount of people it's going to touch. To really, really dream with no limitations, no budget, no business plan. After you have this vision, in colors, in true colors, then you have to ask yourself whether this is something that the world really needs.
Mhm.
And if the answer is yes, or definitely yes, the next question is, will you be willing to take this journey if you knew
Yeah.
that this best case scenario is going to be reduced to 25% of it. It's going to take 5 times the time, the energy, the efforts, the funds to get there. Would you still go on this
Wow.
journey? And if the answer is yes, good luck. And find
Yeah.
a lot of good mentors, because one of the things that I really praise wherever I have the chance is that I started my journey as an artist. I felt that I have, besides my creativity and my vision, I didn't have any real skills and
Right.
tools to get there. And what I've done for almost a year was just meet with every person that was willing to give me 15 minutes to an hour and a half to mentorship.
Yeah. It's also a curiosity that comes into play there. You have to be open to those
Absolutely.
conversations. But, I love the practicality of your answer, because it's not just, you got this, which is a lot of us say that nowadays because we want to support each other, but really what you broke it down into, this is the facts. I love the concept of starting with that.
Yeah, because if you don't hold to this perfect dream, it's going to be so hard to wake up and work 20 hours a day when storms come, and they will arrive.
To end off, I want to ask you what being a trailblazer means to you.
Being an ADHD and being very curious and very creative. I never know what's the right way to do things. Okay. It's like there's a path, and I always look at the people walking in this path, and my first feeling is like they all know something that I
Really?
don't get.
Interesting.
So I'm always looking for ways to get to the same point with my set of skills. So I think that I would usually, go in those unpaved roads when you're carrying a mission that is not only, something that you're just curious and wandering around, but you carry a mission and you collect people to move this mission with you. So I think that you're just getting everybody to the path that you just created.
Yeah. I think in this society, all of us think we need to be the same, right? And what you just said, and I completely agree, is actually a lot of the most powerful things happen when you take your own. You get to see a different view that most people don't see.
Yeah, and I really think, we should be more playful about everything in life, because if we do things, just the
Tunnel
way they're
vision.
supposed to be done, or the way they have always been done, we're going to achieve what have always been achieved.
Yeah, exactly. It's just the math. It's just I want to thank you for coming on today. Like, truly such a pleasure. What makes you so incredible is that your vulnerability is your strength. And I think that's
Thank you.
so beautiful. Thank you so much for the work that you're doing and for sharing your story.
Thank you so much for having
Thank
me.
you.
It was really wonderful.